This is Bringing the Darkness to the Light with Catherine Nadal, professional psychic medium.
Today we have Jeff Plate. He is an American professional hard rock heavy metal drummer. He has been a band member of Wicked Witch, Savatage, Trans-Siberian Orchestra, Metal Church and Alta Reign. He is best known as the drummer for the American heavy metal bands Savatage and the Trans-Siberian Orchestra, especially for their albums Japan Live in 1994 and 1995 Dead Winter Dead, which was Jeff's first studio album with the band. Dead Winter Dead contained Christmas Eve Sarajevo 1224, which was the catalyst for forming Trans-Siberian Orchestra. He is an original member of Trans-Siberian Orchestra from 1996 and was toured on their first tour in 1999. He has been on every album and every tour with them. Jeff has been involved in many creative collaborations. In 2003 to 2007, he worked with violinist Mark Wood. He also worked with the Chris Caffery Solo Project from 2004 to 2006. 2006, he joined Metal Church and played with them until 2017. In 2019, he formed Alta Regin. As a career musician, he accomplished the long-awaited bucket list album of his. His dream was to write both lyrics and music as well as producing an album, which he did twice with two amazing albums. He also completed 2 albums with Alta Reign guitarist Tommy Cook in 2022 and 2024. It is a true pleasure to have you on the show, Jeff.
Thank you for having me, Catherine. Good to see you.
Thank you. Good to see you. Yeah, I'm a big fan. I have to say, many of our listeners are also big fans of yours as well. I know a lot about you from just the albums and from interviews I've watched, but I don't know your early life. So how did your life start, Jeff?
In upstate New York, I live in a town called Horseheads, which is in the southern tier region of New York, the Finger Lakes region. I'm about, I think, 15 minutes south of Seneca Lake. So I'm in the wine country up here, and it's just beautiful. But I was born in a rural area, actually born in Montour Falls, but raised in Horseheads, New York. Lived here for pretty much, all of my teen years until my 20s and early 30s. And yeah, I still live here now. I'm married. I have a home here. My family had a farm, a 100-acre farm that I now own. So I have a beautiful piece of property in upstate New York. But this is where it all began for me. And as a young kid, living in the country, baling hay, running around, doing all that kind of stuff, and having this dream of of being a musician, being a professional touring drummer. It's just amazing that as a kid, I still remember thinking about that stuff. And here I am all these years later talking to you about it. And it's pretty cool. Everything comes full circle.
Yes, there's something to say about manifestation, manifesting it as a young age. So I understand some of your influences were Kiss. So early on, Kiss was a big influence. Is that correct?
Yes, absolutely. There was a lot of influence before Kiss. My parents were big country music fans. So, and granted, growing up in the 60s, I was born in 1962. So I had like 3 television channels and AM radio. So, and a bunch of country music records. So this is what I was kind of weaned on for a number of years. My mother was fairly musical. She dabbled in guitar and piano and encouraged, myself and my sister to pick up an instrument and just try. So, but drums obviously worked for me. The other 2 did not work so well. But when I was, I think I was 12 years old. I remembered seeing Chicago on television. They had a television special called Live at Caribou Ranch. And Chicago was honestly my first favorite band. Chicago 7 was the first album that I ever bought as a kid with my own money. And it's kind of interesting. I listen back to that record now, and it is so eclectic. And I'm trying to imagine my 12-year-old self listening to this and, getting into it and loving this, but I did. And, along with everything else, there was American Bandstand, there was Soul Train, stuff that was on the radio. But a year later, when I was 13, I saw a commercial on television for this show called The Midnight Special. And this was a music show that ran every Friday night, I think at like 1 o'clock in the morning. There was this short little clip of this band called Kiss. And I was like, what was that? So I convinced my parents to let me stay up late that night and watch the show. And I saw Kiss. They came out and they did Deuce and they did Black Diamond. And I was completely blown away. I was 13 years old. I had a little General Electric cassette recorder that I held up to the speaker of the TV and taped it. But I could not believe what I just saw and what I just heard. And going back to my background and how I grew up and where I grew up, to see these four guys on stage dressed up the way they were, doing what they were doing, it was like, aliens had just landed on Earth. So that really lit the fire under me to be a musician. And that's when I got a little bit more serious about drumming, practicing, upgrading my little 4-piece red sparkle drum kit and getting private lessons. And everything just kind of spawned from there. But, Kiss was the band that really lit the fire under me. But soon after that, it was Rush and Neil Peart. And from there, it was just all of a sudden I was being exposed to so much new music and cool music. And, everything was coming at me really, really fast. But I was just so young and eager. I was soaking it all up and just could not get enough music. I was playing drums all the time. And here I am. Like I said, it's just when you're thinking of this in your bedroom as you're sitting behind the drum kit playing to Kiss Alive, imagining you're on the stage and fast forwarding all these years and actually doing it for myself now. It's pretty cool where it all started.
I have to give you a lot of credit because at a young age, when you mentioned 12, 13, 14 years old, there's so many distractions in life, A lot of times sports sometimes overlays into, so parents say, hey, are you going to do music and sports? Or you can't do both. So it's interesting that you may have been, involved in sports, but it looks like music kind of came through for you in the end.
I was, it's funny, prior to seeing Kiss, I was young. I was playing baseball in Little League. I had a country boy fastball. I was a really good young baseball player. But it was the summer of 1974, I believe, running around with my friend, and my right hip literally popped out of joint. Had to be rushed to the hospital. Hip was pressed back in. I had 4 pins drilled in my hip, 4 3-inch pins. And at that point, the doctors were like, no more sports for you for another 3 or 4 years. You're growing, and this is why this happened. Your bones weren't fully developed. So anyhow, I was on crutches for 6 months, and this is where my interest in sports kind of took a left turn towards music. And, here again, like I said, then seeing Kiss the following year and was like, all right, baseball is now out of the picture. That's what I'm going to do. But I've always loved sports, but baseball, it was something I was really good at when I was young.
Wow. Yeah, that's pretty scary, especially when you think about that age and being, kind of, you're leashed to these 2 crutches. So, getting around and stuff, but encouraging you to get up and walk. But doing drums, so you actually started when you were on crutches, or you had to wait until you got rid of those crutches to kind of sit behind a drum set?
No, I had started before that. I was in like school band, messing around on the snare drum when I was probably like 3rd, 4th, 5th grade. And then I got the drum set, and the accident certainly sidelined all of that. Once I got beyond that and had this new inspiration, my parents could tell, the kid's got something when he's playing drums. He loves it and he can do it. So let's get him some private lessons. So I hooked up with a local instructor. His name was Bobby Williams. And I spent 2 or 3 years with him, and fantastic instructor. I learned so much. And I actually still use the books that I was taught all those years ago. I still use them for my students now. The sports aspect of it, in kind of correlating that to drumming is an athletic event. So I was fortunate when I really got serious about drums that I was, pretty physically coordinated, and I was able to to do it. It's fun when you can sit down at your instrument and do something and it actually sounds good. So I had some things working in my favor, and that just really helped all along.
Wow, that's so interesting. Yeah. So when you started to become a teen, upstate New York, I know it because I had been in the military for many years, and I visited reserve units up in that area, Rochester, Horseheads. Were you going out to clubs? Like, what was kind of like, because here in the New York City area, we were going to clubs. I mean, underage and all that, but we were checking out bands, so it didn't matter how old we were, right? So what was kind of like your early bar scene with bands?
Well, back during that time, the drinking age was 18. So, I mean, if you were 16 and kind of looked 18, you were able to get into just about anywhere. So we all took advantage of that. I had the fortune of meeting an older musician in the area, a guitarist named Frank Dana. And he was, I think, 5 years older than I was. But I hooked up with him when I had just turned 17. And he was like, wow, this kid can play. And, you know, I'm in this band, or I know these people, they want to put this band together. And, you know, at that time, there was live music almost every night of the week in this area. When I was 17, I got hooked up with Frank and joined this band called Seneca, and we were playing, you know, 2, 3, 4 nights every week. And that was the beginning of it. You know, that was where you're actually on stage playing in front of people, working with other really good musicians. And, you know, a lot of things really started to come into focus then. I also realized, too, that this was a lot of fun, but I knew that being in Horseheads, New York was really not the place that I was going to be if I was going to achieve this dream of mine. But this was certainly a really great place to get your chops together and a great launching pad. So I was fortunate to work with a bunch of really good people. And as I mentioned, Frank was older, so he turned me on to a lot of different music that I wasn't initially exposed to, like a lot of jazz fusion, Jeff Beck, Mahavishnu Orchestra, you know, stuff like that he was throwing at me. And I was like, holy cow, this stuff blows my mind. But anyhow, it opened up things musically to just see and hear what was possible out there. And it was just a great learning experience all around.
So leaving Horseheads, you were leaving for school reasons or leaving for music reasons?
Definitely music reasons. When I was in high school, of course, and here again, during these times, you know, the internet did not exist. The ability to gather information or find out about something did not exist, you know, at the snap of a finger like it does now. My guidance counselor during the time, he had no idea about Berkeley or PIT, you know, Musicians Institute out in Hollywood, or any of these major music schools in the country. You know, I told him, like, hey, I want to be a drummer. I want to play drums in a rock band. You know, his whole thing was sending me to some school for marching band and this and that. And I was like, nope, that's not me. So when I got out of high school, a year after graduating, I went to Florida and things did not work out there. But I came back home, and in 1984, some friends of mine that lived in the state of Massachusetts, in Worcester, Massachusetts, got a hold of me and said, hey, you know, we've got this band and our drummer just left, and, you know, what are you doing? It's like, I'm heading to Massachusetts. So I went out there, and so the idea was to get out of this area and try to, you know, big fish in a small pond kind of thing. And I knew I had to get out of this small pond in order to make something happen for myself. So yeah, I moved out to Worcester, Massachusetts in 1984. And from there, I just met a bunch of people, did a lot of really, really cool gigs, played with some awesome musicians. And yeah, I lived in the Boston area for 10 years.
Oh, yeah. So is that the band called Wicked Witch? Is that the band that you were involved in there?
That wasn't the initial band. I went through a series of cover bands and this and that and every other thing. And I ended up moving more towards Boston. I lived on the South Shore, and I met a guitarist named Matt Leff. Matt Leff was a graduate of GIT, fantastic guitarist. He had auditioned for Ronnie James Dio when he was in Hollywood at GIT, and he was like number 2. He almost got the gig with Dio. But Matt came back to Massachusetts with this credibility, you know, and I wanted to hook up with this guy. So we talked and started jamming, and one thing led to another. He's like, I know this vocalist that I met out in Hollywood. His name is Zach Stevens, and we need to fly him out here to Boston and have him be the vocalist for this group we're putting together. And that is what became Wicked Witch. So Wicked Witch basically came into an existence, I think, in 1989. Yeah, we had a really great time. We wrote about 15 songs. We ended up playing all of the time. Did a couple demos. We never got the record deal that we had hoped to get. Probably if we had known about the overseas market, we could have got something there. But we just didn't know. You know, we were young and didn't have anybody really telling us what to do and where to go. It was interesting. Zach flew into Massachusetts, and the night that I picked, actually Matt and I picked Zach up from the airport, from Logan Airport. You know, it's like, hey, I just met this guy. Let's go out to a club and have a beer and hang out and talk, you know? And so we go to a club and Savatage is playing. So we walk in there. Ironically, Zach Stevens had met Savatage in Hollywood. Zach had been managing a hotel out there that Savatage stayed at. So he had met the guys. And I had never seen them before. I had never heard them before. And I walked in there and I was blown away by this band. They were awesome. So the first night I meet Zach Stevens is the first and only time that I've ever seen Savatage play without me being in the band. Ironically, 1992, late 1992, Zach got a call from Savatage to be their new lead singer, and he was off. It was kind of an interesting synchronicity there, how that all came to be. But our initial run in Boston was great. We did so well out there. And then I think what happened to a lot of bands at that time was Nirvana. You know, all of a sudden grunge came along in like 91, 92 and just completely knocked the rock scene on its, you know, off its tracks. And things changed a lot for that whole music scene. But Zach had left the area and he was the new lead singer of Savatage.
Yeah. So how did you end up getting connected with them?
Myself and Matt left. We tried to continue Wicked Witch in Boston for another year or so, and it just didn't work. And at this point, I had been living in Boston for 10 years. I was 31 years old, and I thought, you know, I got to figure something out here. So I decided to move back to New York and, you know, just kind of reboot, think about what I was, you know, what is my next path here? What am I going to do next? While I was home, you know, I'd heard Zach's first record with Savatage called Edge of Thorns. Fantastic. And I remember at the time being blown away by the guitarist, and that was Chris Caffery. So Zach did the first album with Savatage and went on tour with them. And then unfortunately in late 1993, Chris Caffery was killed in a car accident. I gave this all several months to just kind of, you know, I wanted to reach out to Zach, but I didn't want to be too soon about it and whatever. So in 1994, I reached out to Zach, and this was the beginning of March 94, and just asked him, you know, what are you doing? And you want to try to reboot Wicked Witch? You want to, you know, what's going on? First of all, how are you? How's everybody else? And what are you doing moving forward? Much to my surprise, Zach says, well, producer, manager Paul O'Neill decided they wanted to keep the band going and they want to hire you as the drummer. And I'm in Horseheads, New York thinking this is the last place that I ever expected to get this call and get the word to join a band. But Zach had referred me. He said, Jeff's the guy. They went off some demos that we did, and I flew down to Florida later that month in March, met everybody, and I've been there ever since. So it was a very interesting time, because here I was back home, you know, reconnecting with a bunch of friends, and I was playing locally and having a lot of fun. But then all of a sudden this opportunity fell into my lap, and I always said, all right, this is it. This is your chance. Go down there. Don't give them a reason to let you go. And like I said, that was 1994, and I've been there ever since.
Yes. Yeah, I understand that's a complicated time for the band, especially since the tragic passing of Chris. But it's good that they decided not to change the band and to keep it the way that they had been, but also to add you into the mix. So that's pretty amazing. Yeah. Well, they knew talent when they saw it.
Like I said, it was interesting. I went down to Florida. I met everybody. Alex Skolnick was the guitarist that they brought in to finish the record and do the tour. And, you know, Alex Skolnick he was a huge name in the rock world as far as guitarists at the time. And I was I was just so thrilled, to be reconnected with my friend Zach, who was a fantastic vocalist, and I wasn't going to find another vocalist like him probably anywhere. It's like, wow, I'm playing with Alex Skolnick. This is incredible. Also, when I got down there, we did pictures. They had already recorded the Handful of Rain record, and said, hey, we're going to do a tour in September. Go home and learn everything. So that's what I did. And when I got home and started really digging into the Savatage catalog and learning all these songs, I realized really what a special band this was. This is not just a heavy metal hard rock band. There was a lot of interesting symphonic pieces, some really great musical songs, ballads. Paul O'Neill's lyrics and his producing was fantastic. And I realized I'm not going to get another opportunity like this. My style fit perfectly with what they were doing. So it really just fit in well. And once I got on the road with the guys in late 1994, everything really gelled. I became the official drummer in the band during that tour. And from there, we went to Japan, did Japan Live 94. And that was my first professional recording ever, which happened to be a live record with this band that I just joined. So it was pretty interesting how everything came about.
Yes, you were very lucky. And the sequence of events is kind of key in all of this. But I do understand that was the album right after that, live album, Dead Winter Dead. That's where you somehow were involved in the Christmas Eve Sarajevo. So how can you explain that to the audience?
So Paul O'Neill was the lyricist and producer for Savatage. John Oliva and his brother Chris were the main songwriters, but obviously Chris had passed. But with the albums that Paul was a part of with Savatage, he generally had a story, a concept that went along with the records. Paul was a very worldly man. He was very concerned and very upset about the war that was going on in Bosnia at the time. I really didn't have much to do with the writing of this record. They had it all mapped out, down to really what they wanted me to play and everything. And still, that was fine. I was the new guy. I was more than willing to do what they wanted me to do. But this concept was really something that Paul felt very strongly about. And in the middle of this story was this instrumental Christmas song, Christmas Eve, Sarajevo, 1224. And, all of us were kind of like scratching our heads thinking, what is Paul thinking putting this song on this record? There was no denying that when you heard the final version of this song, it was magnificent. It was so powerful and so well done. But still, it's Savatage. It's this progressive metal band. How does this fit into the scheme of things? But anyhow, it did. And that record did extremely well for us over in Europe. Oddly enough, in America, Christmas Eve Sarajevo took off in a completely different direction, became this instant holiday hit. And next thing you know, Paul O'Neill and John Oliva and their team of writers and people they were working with, all of a sudden they had this, hit song. But it had kind of taken off in a completely different direction. Paul had ideas of creating this group with multiple vocalists and, all kinds of orchestration and fantastic musicians and a story behind it. And this song became the catalyst for him to create the Trans-Siberian Orchestra. So 1996, TSO was an official entity. We did our first album in 1996, Christmas Eve and Other Stories. And, that thing has gone on to sell over 12 million records and has been the base of all these tours and really our success over all these years.
Yes, it's an incredible show. I've seen it several times, and if anyone hasn't seen it, they don't know what they're missing. It is a light show. It is a sound show. It is a complete experience. My first show, I was like in the third row, and I was gifted it with some of my friends. And, they prepared me in the beginning. They were like, we know that you were in Iraq, but it's going to be really loud and really bright, and we're here with you, And I thought, Jesus, a lot of preparation. Well, they weren't kidding me. My feet were vibrating. My body was vibrating. At one point, one of the guys grabbed my hand, and he was like, are you okay? And I was like, yeah. But I had like tears in my eyes. I just could not cannot believe the impact of the crowd. I mean, it's not just the energy that comes off of the instruments, but the energy that's coming from the crowd back. And I think if there was like a visual, you would see the stage reflecting on the audience and the audience reflecting back to the stage. And it's like this symphony of togetherness. It's just incredible.
That's a great way to put it. There was no denying the first TSO record, Christmas Eve and Other Stories, was a big hit. Christmas Eve Sarajevo was a hit song. The second record, The Christmas Attic, was also a big hit. Boughs of Holly, and there was a couple other songs off of that did really well for us. But, TSO established itself as, this thing is for real. We've got something really going well here. The next step in all this was putting it on stage and doing this live. How was this going to translate to the stage? How is Paul's story going to be presented in the right manner? Paul wanted to create a show that was going to touch everybody emotionally. He wanted to sonically overwhelm you, visually overwhelm you, but surround all that around a story that everybody could relate to. And he nailed it. We started in 1999 doing these tours, and we were all very nervous about getting on stage and doing this for the first time, because here we are. We are a hard rock band at our core, And we walked out on stage, and there was families, there was kids, there was grandparents, there was people in tuxedos, there was women in beautiful gowns, and then there was the kid with the Savatage shirt and the Metallica shirt, and we were like, "What the heck is going on?" Well, everybody loved that first show, and every show after that. We toured the story for the first record. We toured for the first 12 years of our touring life, Christmas Eve and Other Stories. And I think the story is really the star of the show, because that is what brought all these different people in and really made everybody connect to each other. And your analogy to the symphony between the audience and it's exactly true. Everybody on stage loves what we're doing. We're all very accomplished musicians. What we do very well. But we thoroughly enjoy what we do too. And we're part of something special. And I think the audience realizes that, they see that, but they're also just, taken in by the story and all the effects and the sound and everything that's going on. So 1999, we started in small theaters. Within 3 or 4 years, we were in arenas. And by 2005, 2006, we were selling out major arenas twice a day. It was just amazing how fast this thing grew, but how it really connected with so many people. And I was just blown away. I still am.
Yes, it really has grown. So some of the audience may not realize this, but I had heard that there's a West Coast and an East Coast. So is that correct with Trans-Siberian Orchestra? So can you explain how that works?
So in 1999, we did 7 shows, and this really was just a test run to see how well this is going to be received. At the time, we were trying to do this tour between Thanksgiving and Christmas Eve. So there was really only a month of time that we were, that was our window. In the year 2000, we had offers for 70 shows. So there was no way we were going to be able to cover all of that ground and play all these different states and cities with just the one group. Paul O'Neill was a New York City guy, big in Broadway and, loved all that kind of thing. And he kind of approached TSO like that. It's like, we're going to take the original group of people, split it in 2, and then we're going to fill out the rest of the cast. And then we're going to have 2 touring groups that are playing the same show, same set list, same story, same production. Obviously, there's a different vibe to each group, but the idea was we've got something that has become a national hit. People want to see this. Let's put this out there and make this work and try to cover all the ground that we can. So we've been running with an East Coast and West Coast group ever since the year 2000, and this allows us. We do a lot of shows in a short amount of time. We tour just a little over about 7.5 weeks in November and December. And between both groups, we perform to close to 1 million people every year. So it really is amazing how much ground we cover and how many people we're able to get in front of.
That's incredible. So is there any opportunity for you to jet out and do a West Coast show, or do they strictly keep you on the East Coast?
When the split came, as far as Savatage, which is what the core of the band was, it was myself on drums, Chris Caffery and Al Petrelli on guitar, Johnny Middleton on bass. We were the core musicians. So we were split in two. Chris and I ended up staying on the East Coast. Al Petrelli and Johnny Middleton went to the West Coast. So, and then the rest of the cast was filled out from there, all the singers and the other musicians and everything. So this has been pretty much established ever since then. Chris and I have been on the East Coast tour every year. And I think it's probably worked for the benefit for the fans, as much as maybe some people on the West Coast would love to see us. They also love their West Coast band. Same goes for the East Coast fan base. They expect to see Jeff and Chris on that stage every year. Out West, they expect to see Al and Johnny every year. So that's how we've run. This has worked very well this way. And during a couple of the spring tours that we were involved in, that's when we kind of brought the original core back together, but with different vocalists from East and West, some other musicians from East and West. So there was a really good mix of people from both groups then.
That's great. The late 90s, when you talk about this period of time, I remember it really well. And there was a big buzz about rock operas. So I think Queensryche had done Mindcrime. And so would you consider, is this considered like a, rock opera of some sort, or
sure,
similar with the
opera
storytelling?
Yep, rock opera. Paul liked to use the phrase rock theater, or the term rock theater. Yeah, Paul wrote some very interesting stories and concepts. And, while this was all happening here in America with the Trans-Siberian Orchestra, over in Europe, Savatage was doing extremely well too, because Dead Winter Dead. That story just connected with so many people, because for Europe, it was like, this is right in their backyard. They know exactly what's going on in this war, and this album spoke to them. So through 96, 7, 8, 9, up to 2000, Savatage had a very, very strong presence in Europe, also in the States, but we did some shows in Japan and South America too. But Europe, we were doing extremely well. So it was pretty cool. We kind of had the best of both worlds going on. But to your point, the story that Paul had written, not just for the album Dead Winter Dead, but the Savatage record, Wake of Magellan also, just really connected with a lot of rock fans, and the people in Europe just absolutely loved it.
Yes, it was a testament to what they were living through, not just hearing, but they were living through troubled times. And I think a lot of times when a band or an artist writes about something that, hits close to home, there's almost a bigger response to it. Would you agree?
Sure. And I mean, in this case, this was not a safe subject to write about. Paul kind of stuck his neck out there with this album, but the way he wrote the story, his lyrics were perfectly done, and just the music that went around it was so powerful and so majestic that, it was hard to deny this record. And like I said, in Europe especially, these people really connected to it. And yeah, we had a great run over there. It was really a lot of fun.
I have to give you a lot of credit, though, because from what you just said, it sounded like they wanted you to tour in both TSO as well as Savatage. So you were kind of wearing two hats at the same time. For those of us that are not accomplished musicians, how hard is it to keep all the songs in your head, or all of those, notes in your head going from one set to another, or one band to another?
So, well, during this time period, Savatage was actually touring before TSO started touring. So this was a very busy time for Savatage. TSO as a touring entity kind of started at the tail end of that. So we had a separation there. But to answer your question, I mean, it's just a lot of rehearsal. It's a lot of rehearsal. I mean, my job as the drummer is to hold the whole thing together. I can't make any mistakes. I can't forget any words. I can't. If I forgot a word or played a wrong chord, that's one thing. A lot of times that can go over somebody's head in the audience. But if the drummer makes a mistake, that ain't good. So I took my job very, very seriously. And yeah, and here again, I loved playing in this band. This music really connected with me, but just the style of it too was perfect for me and my playing. And you got to go up there. This is not just, you're not playing at a friend's party anymore. You're a professional musician on stage in front of a lot of people. You got to go up there. A, yes, you're going to have fun, but B, this is serious. Get on stage, do your job, enjoy it, but just do it to the best of your ability. And hey, like I said, when I joined Savatage in 1994, that was 30 years ago. And that was the mindset I took back then, and I still do today.
Yes, well, it's pretty incredible. And, you have such a well-known name in the business. It's not a surprise that you weren't asked to collaborate with these other artists. So can you explain how you got involved with working with a violinist?
Mark Wood was the first string master that we had in the Trans-Siberian Orchestra. So Mark and I worked together for a number of years, touring with TSO every winter, and we became good friends. And Mark and his wife, Laura Kay, had a program called Electrify Your Strings. And not only was, Mark an established violinist, he also invented the violin, the Viper violin that he plays, which is a fretted violin, plays like a guitar. So Mark was really a worldwide, he had respect all over the world for his playing, but also for his invention. He released several solo records, but he also got involved in a program called Electrify Your Strings, which went around the country and worked with school bands and school orchestras. He invited me to come along, hey, you want to check this out? And I said, sure. I absolutely loved it. We had so much fun working with school programs all over the country. Bermuda, we went to Bermuda and worked in Bermuda, which worked out great for my wife and I, because that was our honeymoon. But Laura Kay would handle the choir. She would do work all the vocals up with them. And then Mark and I and the rest of his band would work with the school band and orchestra. And we would put together these shows that were just awesome. We would do these classic rock songs from Zeppelin to the Stones and things like that. These kids had so much fun, and it was so rewarding to work with them and just to see, the look on their faces when you finished one of these shows was like, that was me when I was 12 years old and 13 years old. I wish I had Mark Wood come to my school and do something as cool as this. So I absolutely love doing it. But after a while, I got busy doing other things. So I had to step away from that. I think it was 2007 or 2008. But also, working with Chris Caffery. I'd worked with Chris Caffery and Savatage since 1995. We've done every tour together since then in Savatage and also in TSO. We've been joined at the hip for all these years doing everything. And when he wanted to do a solo project, I was like, absolutely. So I did the solo work with Chris Caffery. Kurt Vanderhoof, who is the founder and guitarist and main songwriter of the band Metal Church, also worked with TSO. So this is where Kurt and I met. I was actually touring with Chris Caffery, opening for Metal Church in Europe. And Kurt and I kind of became good friends then. And when their drummer situation went sideways, he asked me if I'd like to join the band. And I said, yeah. So TSO is the main reason I was involved in these other projects, directly working with people who were working in TSO. But Kurt also had a long history of working with Paul O'Neill. And so there was a connection there, for a number of years. But Metal Church was another band, It's like when I joined Savatage, I knew the name, I knew a couple songs. Metal Church, same thing. But once I got into the catalog and realized just how good this music was, Kurt has written so many iconic metal songs. And, some of the stuff that isn't so popular is just fantastic. So I ended up playing in another legacy group, so to speak, that was another thing that just fit my style and fit in with the group of guys. And we had a really great run. So I was with Metal Church for 11 years.
Yes. It's interesting because each one of these projects seemed to be a stepping stone into another project. But Metal Church is similar but different to Savatage. So how would you explain that for the fans?
Savatage was I mean, both bands were equally heavy and equally powerful, but Savatage had that symphonic element to it. When you add in the keyboards, John Oliva's keyboard playing, Paul O'Neill's producing, along with Paul's lyrics, is probably the main difference in all of that. But Metal Church, I mean, right down to, a simple song like Watch the Children Pray to, some steamroller like Ton of Bricks. It's all really, really well done, really heavy, really powerful. It's interesting when you join groups like this, you see them on stage and they're playing this heavy music. Everybody is so cool and so fun. And off stage, I had a great time with both bands. I mean, we all just got along so well. But on stage, like I said before, they both groups really fit my style, and we just had a blast working together. It was awesome. But it's funny how both bands kind of ran parallel to each other for a number of years and never toured together. It was something we kind of talked about and joked about. It's like, well, how am I going to do that now? I'm in both bands. This ain't going to work. But it's just kind of funny how. Yeah.
It's a great point, but it also is a huge compliment to you. I mean, you're in both two big bands. I mean, so it probably worked out good.
A good place to be. I had both bases covered, but like I said, the fact that Kurt had worked for a number of years with Paul O'Neill was just kind of interesting. How here again, this synchronicity. It's this music world is such a huge world, and it's a very small world all at the same time. It's just amazing how once you start getting into it and meeting people, everybody knows everybody. Oh, that person worked with that person. Yeah, so did I. Wow, blah blah blah. And it really is pretty cool. It's quite an interesting family, this rock metal world that I'm a part of. But it's all good.
Yes, that's so true. When we spoke about early on in your bio, we spoke about you having a, kind of a wish list or a bucket list. I had run into someone last year that said one of the items on their bucket list was to see a Trans-Siberian Orchestra concert, and they had seen one. So I thought, oh, wow, when I read your bio, I thought, wow, that's really a good connection, that someone's bucket list item is a performance of yours. So that again is a testament of your talent. But I do know from reading your bio that you had a long-awaited bucket list of writing lyrics and writing music, but also producing albums. So these two albums that you were able to do came about with your own band, Alta Reign. And I had, I own both of these. I bought them through your Rat Pack Records label, which is a tremendous organization. I mean, they were so easy to order. The CDs came perfectly packaged. They came in a timely manner. There was a confirmation. I mean, I couldn't have asked for anything better. But the quality of the product is amazing. But more importantly, it's the songs. I'm in love with both of the CDs. I've been playing them out. I still have a vehicle that has a CD player inside of it, so I'm lucky. I'm lucky in that regard. But I do know that there's been a couple of songs that have really kind of piqued my interest. But I do know that this band came about. I think you personally named it. So I think Alta Reign, you had named it. Alta is a name for your mom. Is that correct?
That is correct. This project, which really kind of, the project itself came to be in 2019, but the idea for this project had been kicking around in my head for 20 plus years. This came from my days back in Boston, working in the band Wicked Witch and working with guitarist Matt Leff. We had a rehearsal room. I had a very primitive recording setup. I had a cassette deck and a couple mixers, but I had my drums mic'd up. I had everything in the room was mic'd up, and we made some really decent sounding cassettes, but I recorded everything. So I have in my possession now, like 25 plus 90-minute cassettes just full of us playing. And there was so much maybe came and gone in a jam that we never even realized happened until we listened back to it. But there was a lot of stuff that I just felt had potential. Unfortunately, several years ago, Matt Leff, the guitarist, he passed from cancer. And
very sorry.
Prior to that, I had reached out to him and I said, hey, Matt, would you mind if I took some of this material and did something with it? Because, I've got some ideas, I got some song titles and some lyrics, and I just want to try to do this. And he gave me the green light, and, unfortunately he passed before the first album was done, but he has as much to do with the first Alta Reign record as any of us. So this is where the idea for this whole thing came about. But I got together with my friend here, Tommy Cook, local guitar player, fantastic guitarist. He was the only guy locally that I knew could handle what I was thinking and who could relate to Matt's playing. So we got together and just started throwing some ideas around. And the first idea that we worked on was the song Let's Go. Here again, this is my first venture into writing lyrics, producing, songwriting, arranging, leading a project. I've always been behind the drum kit. And I was honestly a little bit nervous, presenting my ideas to somebody, but Tommy was fantastic. He understood exactly what I was thinking. And it's like, wow, that sounds really good. Okay, Tommy, I have another idea. And I think that was Witness. We finished that. We need to bring in our friend Kevin McCarthy on bass. So the three of us really started digging into this whole idea that I had. We had a number of interesting riffs, some good stuff that Matt and I had started years ago. Tommy brought in some really good riffs, but all of the lyrical ideas and the vocal melodies and stuff like that was stuff that I had in my head for literally years. So getting around to the naming of the band, writing the album was hard enough, but trying to come up with a name was even harder. I was talking with a friend about this, and she says, "Wow, isn't your mother's name Alta?" And bing, like this light bulb went off above my head. It's like, yeah, Alta. So Alta means, higher, elevated. It means glorious. It's a really cool name, and it's a unique name too. I juggled a bunch of other words around. I kind of looked up the meanings behind my name and my sister's name, Terry. And, if you looked in the right place, it kind of meant, leader, ruler. So none of those words really sounded right with Alta, but Reign did. And I put those two together and presented it to the other guys in the band, and they said, yep, that's it. That's the name. So that's how the name of the band came about. But the album, the song Mother's Day, is actually about Mother Earth. But nonetheless, my real mother, Alta, has a huge part in all of this. And hey, wouldn't be here without her. So it's all pretty cool.
Yes, that's a great testimony to her. It's interesting because both albums actually have really creative artwork designs to them. So they're pretty powerful as well. Do you want to talk about the creative artwork on those?
Yeah, so I'm from Horseheads, New York. My sister, my late sister Terry, she loved horses. She used to show horses when she was younger. And Mother's Day was, it's about Mother Earth, and basically about Mother Earth just kind of eventually becoming sick of us and getting rid of us, which I wouldn't blame her. We've made a mess out of things. But the artist, I got hooked up with the artist through my friend Zach Stevens. He has done another project called Arc and Angel. And the artwork for this album, I just thought was fantastic. So I got a hold of the artist, and we talked about, my concept and what I wanted to represent on the album cover. And he just come up with just such a great, powerful piece of work. And hey, if anybody, for whatever it's worth, people that look at this CD go, wow, the artwork just jumps out at you. I think on both records for the album Mother's Day, but the girl on the horse, she's everybody. She's not necessarily my sister or my mother or my wife or anybody in particular, but she just represents Earth and the spirit behind that. And riding the horse, I think, just really helps magnify that idea. It's very powerful. But my friend Oleg at Voodoo Dark Art, he's from Russia, does a fantastic job. And I just really love the artwork. And you mentioned Rat Pack Records. Joe O'Brien there does such a great job with packaging this stuff too. I mean, like you said, when you get that CD and open up that package, it's like, wow, this looks fantastic. I can't wait to hear the record,
It's so true. I know. And, getting into both CDs, Have No Fear is a video that I actually watched, and it's just so touching, that video. And, a lot of times we go back in our mind to think of, I don't know, I'm a child of the 80s, right? So we think about how MTV made a big break for it, And a lot of times now people can refer back to not just the song they heard, but what the video represented. So in that video, Have No Fear, it looks like it's on a farm and there's dogs. And can you explain that? Because the lyrics and the imagery to me is just completely touching.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So Alta Reign is a progressive hard rock metal band. Mother's Day really established that. The second album, Upon the Horizon, we realized we kind of have a formula and we have a sound. Let's stick with that and let's improve on that. And musically, we are just, Upon the Horizon is the next step after Mother's Day. And I said, Kevin, I got this idea for a progressive country song. And he's like, what is that? And I said, well, we're gonna find out. So this song all started from, well, honestly, it started from my childhood because I was raised on country music and Merle Haggard and, Jerry Reed, Buck Owens, all these guys. But it was in the mid 2000s that my father was diagnosed with cancer. And this was quite the punch in the gut at the time when you get news like that. And unfortunately, there's a lot of us out there who have gotten this news. So at the time, this was really pretty dramatic and just trying to get your head wrapped around this. At the time, my father's dog was also failing. So it was like, you're punched in the gut twice. And I'm looking at this situation. I was like, my father is sick and his dog is passing. My best friend's best friend is dying. And that lyric stuck in my head for probably 10, 12, 15 years. Behind that was the rhythm to I'm an Okie from Muskogee, an old Merle Haggard song, which is just a very simple bass line. That is how this song came about. But the song is about, losing somebody that you love and watching them go through something horrible like this. And a reference to your pets, your dogs, they are family and they are so much a part of your life. And, I've owned dogs and animals my whole life. And when you lose one, it just tears you apart. But I feel that, we'll see them again someday. But this song, once we started working on it, and we started with the chorus, kind of built everything from there. And I had a lot of the lyrics. So I got together with my other musicians, Zach Hamilton, keyboardist and vocalist. We began working on the lyrics and the melodies for the songs. Or I had the lyrics, but he was helping me with the melodies. And he came up with some of the music in the chorus. Colin Holloway also adding harmonies. Colin is a vocalist and guitarist. While this whole thing is developing, I was like, wow, this song is actually quite different than a lot of the music on these two albums. But it's still us. It still sounds like us. And this song is powerful, regardless of the pop country kind of sound to it. So Tommy Cook came up and we went over the vocals, and he did a fantastic job on the vocals. I think his emotion and the delivery and everything is perfect. Along the way, my producer, Joe Clapp, he was in tune to everything that was going on. And, I said, Joe, I've got this song and I can hear banjo in this. And he's like, hey, I've got a banjo. I said, hey, I can hear some steel guitar in this also. And he's like, you know what? I just got a steel guitar. So we kind of finished the outline for the song, and I sent this to Joe and gave him an idea of what I was hearing. And he sent me back these tracks that were perfect. It was like I didn't have to do anything to them. They just fit right in the song. And it adds such a sense of beauty and sadness, I think, to it. The banjo adds fun and some happiness. And Jane Mangini, who is my keyboardist, she's worked with Trans-Siberian Orchestra for years. And we brought Jane in for the first Alta Reign record, and she's just awesome. And she added such a beautiful piano, string, organ element to this song, filled it out. Yeah, when we got done with Have No Fear, it was like we just kind of sat back and thought, wow, we've really got something here. My heroes, Boyster Cult, with the song Don't Fear the Reaper, we had a little lick of that on the end because it just happened one day when we were working on the song, and it's like, hey, that sounds like Don't Fear the Reaper. And we figured out a way to incorporate that in there. But yeah, the song is, it started with the loss of my dad and his dog, but it just kind of rolled into everybody goes through this, whether it's your dog, you're losing a family member, it's losing a loved one. It's the idea that, you're never going to lose the memory of them. And like I said, I just firmly believe we're going to see him again someday. So have no fear. It's all going to work out. And my bandmates, I can't thank them enough for what they've contributed to both of these albums. But that song in particular, I think everybody really stepped up their game and did a fantastic job.
Yes, it's beautiful. This completes the interview, and you're a completely wonderful interviewer, and your story is incredible, and you've been very lucky, but along with luck brings your amazing talent, and only you have been able to bring that to the table. So I appreciate that. I'm a big fan in many of your bands and in all of your music. So could you take a chance just now to just repeat your social media, plug your websites, how they can get all this for you?
Yeah, basically Facebook. Alta Reign. It's on Facebook. We have our own Facebook page. Jeff Plate Music is on Facebook. You hit me up on Facebook. Instagram, Alta Reign 51, Jeff Plate 51. So that's where you can find us. I found that years ago, the whole website thing and this and that, it was, for what we are doing, this works for us. So I didn't want to get too complicated and too deep into some other things. But yeah, you can also go to Rat Pack Records. Our bio and all the information is there for the music and everything. So appreciate you, Catherine. You're awesome. And everybody out there listening, the support and, sticking around, listening to me play drums for all these years. It's very, very cool. And there's more on the way. So thank you again very much.
Wow. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure. Again, take care. We're going to roll out with your song, Have No Fear by Alta Reign. Thank you.